So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Vaults Continuing Education webinar series with Unchained Capital. Today we are going to be covering deposit and withdrawal fundamentals. I will be your host for the day, David Layton. I am the Director of Concierge Services here at Unchained Capital, joined by Tyler Campbell, who is our Technical Director of Concierge Services, and Justine Harper, who is our Vice President of Concierge Services. So you've got almost everybody from the concierge team here to answer questions, to guide you through what deposits and withdrawals look like. And just a reminder, this webinar is recorded. We record all of these and post them to our Unchained Capital YouTube page, and these are exclusive for Unchained Capital clients only. So we cover everything from basics to advanced and everything in between, all topics in between on these webinars. And yeah, like I said, today we're doing the deposits and withdrawal fundamentals. So I'm going to cover what we are going to go over, and then I'll hand it off to Tyler to start with key terms. But we will be doing a review of key terms. Those are terms that you're going to need to know, that are important to know to understand, set the stage for the rest of the webinar. We will demo moving Bitcoin off of exchanges, how to independently confirm your deposit address, depositing Bitcoin into your Unchained vault, and finally withdrawing or spending from your vault. We're going to wrap up with about 10 minutes to spare at the end, where we'll focus on a Q&A, primarily led by Justine, who will be filtering questions through the chat and the Q&A section throughout the webinar. So if you have questions pertaining to a specific topic, go ahead and drop it in as it comes up. We'll try to answer one question per topic as we go. And then, like I said, the last 10 minutes, try to cover as many questions as possible. So without delaying any further, I'll hand it over to Tyler Campbell, our Technical Director, and he's going to walk us through some key terms.
Awesome. Thank you, David. As David just mentioned, my name is Tyler Campbell. I'm the Technical Director of Concierge Services at Unchained Capital here. There's a good chance that I have onboarded some of you who are listening in today, so thank you for joining. And if I haven't, please feel free to reach out with a technical question, and I'll make sure to get back to you and answer all the questions that you do have about your vaults. To kick things off with key terms, we're going to start with a Bitcoin address. So Bitcoin addresses are where your Bitcoin lives. So it's really, really important to note that Bitcoin does not live in these devices, whether it's a Trezor or a Ledger or a cold card. These devices just help you secure your keys. Bitcoin lives on addresses, and those addresses are the balance of Bitcoin on those addresses is tracked by the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, which is right now about just a little over 400 gigabytes in total size. And as technology improves, hopefully we could get to a spot one day where folks could just run a Bitcoin node, an entire copy of that blockchain database on their phone. Addresses, they're where your Bitcoin live, and they're displayed a few different ways. So we see here both on the left and the right, an address being displayed in a QR code format, so something that your phone can easily scan, as well as text-based. So you see that 3.1 based address on the left and that 3.7 based address on the right. Now you'll notice that there's some fine print above the address. It says a single signature address on the left and a multi-signature address on the right. So these addresses, they look nearly identical. The way they're constructed is a bit different. So you'll notice here that that middle bullet point, we see that addresses are constructed from public keys, which we'll be touching on here in a second. The leftmost address in this instance was constructed using one public key, and the right address that's showing to you was constructed with two public keys. So Bitcoin addresses, where your Bitcoin live, and you can track those balances on the blockchain. Anyone in the world can see these balances, and that really does help verify and enforce Bitcoin's monetary policy of that 21 million hard cap. The next key term in our list of key terms here is a public key. So a public key you can think about as a lock to a given address. So a public key is generated from a private key, which we'll be touching on soon, and it's used to construct a single address. So one public key constructs one address, multiple public keys can construct a single address as well. And your hardware wallets, your devices, these devices share public keys with wallet software like Unchained.com or the Trezor suite that many of you are familiar with at Trezor.io to build addresses. So public keys are used to construct addresses, and you can think about them as the lock to that address. Now, the private key, our next key term, is the key that's used to spend from an address. So if your public key is thought of as your lock, the private key is the key that you insert into that lock that allows you to spend from an address. So hardware wallets, these devices, Trezors, ledgers, cold cards, and others, they know how to use that private key to sign transactions and to spend Bitcoin. So each private key has a corresponding individual public key. And in a single signature context, you have one private key, one public key, and one address. But with multisig, it's just a multiple of that. You'll have a combination of 3 private keys, 3 public keys, and then 1 address, and a 2 of 3 multi-signature, which is what we offer here in our Vault product for Unchained Capital. So we have private key, we have public key, and we have address. But the next key term is something you've probably heard of if you've been listening to Bitcoin podcasts or perusing Bitcoin Twitter, as I'm sure all of us do, maybe sometimes to a fault. But you've heard this term extended public key, or xpub. So if a public key constructs an address, and you can think about a public key as the lock to an address, you can think about an extended public key, or an xpub, as a master lock. So an address is constructed from a public key. Multiple addresses are constructed from an extended public key. So with an extended public key, you can derive nearly infinite individual public keys. And xpubs, or extended public keys, are shared with wallet software to build a series of addresses, or a wallet. So a seed, which we'll cover next, can derive nearly infinite amount of xpubs. So this is kind of important, and we're going to touch on this when we cover seeds, but that you can kind of start to see why the seed is the single most important element that you need to protect. Now, before I move on to seed, I do want to note in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see the header image for the Ticket to Understanding xpubs, which is a fantastic article written by our senior software engineer, Justin Moore, that kind of covers xpubs and really puts a great analogy to use there by comparing them to a raffle ticket, where, if you've been a part of a raffle, maybe at a high school football game or something like that, definitely want to mention high school football with the Texas flag behind me. You'll know that, when you get a raffle ticket, you hold one to keep, and the person running the raffle also keeps a matching ticket. So you can go and match up and prove that you won the raffle. So extending that analogy to public and private keys is really, really powerful. So I definitely encourage you to go check out that article. Now, the next key term is seed. So xpub is your master lock, your seed is your master key, and it's the most important item that you protect. So with a seed, and really it's playing off that word seed, you can derive nearly infinite individual private keys and public keys, and therefore addresses. So the seed is the component from which everything else is derived. And because it's very important, it's the most important item you want to protect, we always want to make sure to secure it physically. That's why we write it down when we set up our devices and we get our seeds. We want to be writing that down on paper and not storing it online, or maybe in a picture, or even in your notes app on your phone or anything like that. So an example of a seed is shown to you here. We have words 1 through 24, maybe a bit of a bold strategy, putting a seed out on the webinar. But that's kind of the power of multisig, because in a 2 of 3 multi-signature, you actually have 3 seeds that would then be used to by your devices to leverage them to be able to spend your Bitcoin. Now, before I move on and kind of wrap up our key terms with our final key term, I do want to mention here, because I've noticed this from clients in my onboardings that I've done over the past couple months, we see a 24-word seed here. And seeds are also given in a 12-word format. And clients ask, well, is one more secure than the other? And so I just want to briefly touch on that, since this might be a Q&A question as well. So ultimately, the 12 and 24 words just represent a really, really large random number. That is your private key. That's just more human readable when we apply words to it. So a 12-word seed versus a 24-word seed, they're about the same in general security. So the amount of times that someone would need to guess 12 words in a row to guess your seed. The number of possibilities is so large that that number actually contains 12 commas, not 12 zeros, but 12 commas. So if one of you is a mathematician out there and knows how to verbally explain how large that number is, please feel free to message in. But that's just with the 12-word seed. So 24-word seed is exponentially more random than that. And then with multisig, you're layering these seeds on top of each other for additive security as well. So just wanted to highlight that if you're kind of wondering, why does one device generate 12 words and another 24? At the end of the day, you're still very, very secure. So wrapping up our key terms with our final key term here is the wallet configuration file. And this is the directions to your multi-sig address. So my colleague, Phil Geiger, likes to say that this is like the treasure map to your Bitcoin address, to your multi-sig address. It's used to find your multi-signature addresses if your wallet software is unavailable. So Justine, what I learned from her early on how to phrase this is like a doomsday scenario, right? You go to access our website and it's down. We don't want to be that single point of failure for our clients. It's kind of the whole idea of multi-signature is to eliminate that single point of failure. And with this wallet configuration file, you would be able to go to another wallet software and rebuild your multi-signature addresses. That could be our open source tool Caravan, which we know and love. It could also be applications like Sparrow Wallet or Electrum. So part of my job is putting out technical content that could help you leverage this wallet configuration file in a doomsday scenario, but it's really important to know that it's there for you in your vault. Now, this wallet configuration file, last point I want to make on it is that you can download it and it's okay to be kept digitally on your computer. If somebody were to access this file, the most they would be able to do is see how many Bitcoins, how much Bitcoin, how many Bitcoins. We'll talk about how to phrase that in a plural sense, maybe a little bit later, but they'd be able to see your Bitcoin balances. They would not be able to spend your Bitcoin. They still need your 2 keys. So while it is okay to be kept digitally, we do recommend that maybe you encrypt it or place it behind a password manager just to protect against that unauthorized physical access. So with that being said, I'm going to pause here. Justine, was there any questions that came through during those key terms? Maybe somebody wrote in and knows how to explain a number that has 12 commas in it.
Was actually that was a really great explanation. First of all, good review of key terms. We did have a couple questions come up, and first of all, Brent says that was a great explanation of the terms, Tyler. Appreciate the simplicity there. But I had one question pop up from Scott, which we may have to do kind of like a short answer to because it can get kind of complex, but he's just asking about when he uses his multi-sig vault, he noticed that the deposit addresses are the same, but on a single signature, they were different each time. Why is that? How can he maybe opt in to have that different? And then also, how does it impact his privacy? So if you can kind of I know that can be a little complex of a topic, but if you can give a quick overview of perhaps why that is and how he can change that within his vault itself too.
Awesome. Yeah, first and foremost, great question. I will answer that with, that's part of the transaction model that we currently use here at Unchained Capital. And, it is something that we're working to add it in as a feature into our platform, because that would be, kind of nice to be receiving multiple multi-signature addresses. Right now, currently, the way the platform is built is that your vault does have one deposit address up until the time you withdraw from your vault, which David is going to be covering later on this call. Then the next time you go to deposit, we're going to be showing you a new address in that scenario. So right now with that single deposit address, if you would like to use, a different multi-signature address, the really cool thing about the platform is that you can use your 2 keys that you're using for one vault to build as many vaults as you'd like. So if you do want to use another address, maybe you have a deposit that you want to make and you want it to go to a completely clean and brand new address, you can construct another vault. So there is that option for you in the meantime, as we're working, really, really hard to introduce these new features for our clients.
I think that's it for now. And yes, it is something that you can kind of opt into because when you spend, a new deposit address is created. But yeah, great explanation. I think that's it for questions right now. We do have a few that have popped up, but we're going to save those for a little bit later. So let's go back to David.
Okay, perfect. Excellent job, Tyler. I agree with the comment there. You did a excellent job explaining the key terms. Justine, thank you for the Q&A there. So the next step of this webinar, we're going to start talking about moving Bitcoin off of exchanges, how to independently confirm your deposit address, which you can do on the device, and then depositing Bitcoin into your Unchained vault. So we group these all together. They're the second segment with three specific topics that are like topics. So we wanted to cover them together. But before I hand it back to Tyler to kind of jump through the moving Bitcoin off of exchanges phase. You have to ask, why would you want to move Bitcoin off of an exchange? So there's a very popular term in the Bitcoin space, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So when you have Bitcoin on an exchange, it's actually an IOU, it's not BTC, until you send that Bitcoin to an address that you built using your own keys. So it's very important to know, if it's with an exchange, it's not actually your Bitcoin until you hold it in an address that is protected by your own keys. And that's what we call self-custody. So it's also important to know that exchanges can potentially be a single point of failure. So what we try to do is avoid every single point of failure and counterparty risk. So with an exchange, there's the potential for hacks. You could forget a password or lose your login info, or risk losing your mobile device or a physical computer, and potentially put your Bitcoin at risk. So best practice, and one of our favorite things to do and to help clients do, is pull Bitcoin off of an exchange into an address that they built with their own keys, preferably in this collaborative custody multi-signature format, which is what we do at Unchained. So the next step here, I'm going to hand it back over to Tyler, and he's going to show what that looks like to send Bitcoin from an exchange to his vault.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, David. I am going to be showing how to move Bitcoin off of an exchange. And the lucky winner today was Gemini as an exchange that I'm going to be siphoning Bitcoin out of. So I know there are many exchanges that are popular: Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, some fantastic Bitcoin only exchanges like River or Swan. But today, the lucky winner is Gemini. So when you're on an exchange, the key item that you want to look for when you're going to be moving Bitcoin to, whether it's your multisig vault or self-custody in general, is an option for transfer or withdraw. In some weird instances that might also say send. But on this interface, as I'm signed into my Gemini account here with an impressive portfolio balance of about $25, I notice here on the screen that in the upper right-hand portion of the screen, I see a transfer option. So I'm going to go ahead and select transfer. And on this transfer menu, the very bottommost option here is withdraw from Gemini. So I'm going to go ahead and select withdraw. And then I can I'm taken rather to this transfer funds page where it says withdraw from Gemini. So I'm going to select the currency I'm going to withdraw, which is of course Bitcoin. So I could type in BTC right here and just select it, and go ahead and select continue on this page as well. Now, the second step for my withdrawal is selecting a destination. So it doesn't necessarily, in Gemini's case, say address, but this is where we're going to be sending our Bitcoin, because again, Bitcoin lives in addresses. So if I want to be sending Bitcoin to my multi-signature address, what I'm going to go ahead and do is select my Unchained Capital tab up here in my browser and log into my vault really quickly, one of my test vaults that I use. And I'm going to enter my 2FA to access my vault. I do suggest using two-factor authentication within your vaults, by the way. It's a very good and strong security best practice. So in my webinar vault here, I have a small balance here, but I want to add to it from Gemini. So what I'm going to do is grab my deposit address for my vault. To grab my deposit address, I can go ahead and select deposit here in the middle of the screen. I'm going to be met with this modal that says your vault deposits are stored in a 2 of 3 multisig address. To my point from the key terms, it says this address will not change unless you withdraw or transfer funds. I can go ahead and select show address. Now, if I had the Gemini mobile app or maybe another online wallet, I'd be able to take my phone and scan this QR code. But I can also just click and copy this address that starts with a 3 here. So I'm going to just click this address, and you'll notice the clipboard, I had that green check mark up here. So I'll do that one more time just so you see it. That copies that address to your clipboard. So now that we have that address copied, we can go over here to the Gemini withdraw window again, and we can paste it here. Pasting, you could certainly right click and then select paste, or my favorite keyboard shortcut, Command V on a Mac, just to paste that address in there. So once you paste your address, you can then select continue, And then you're going to enter the amount. You know what I'm going to do here, because I'm a good Bitcoiner who self-custodies, I'm going to select max here, and we're just going to take all the Bitcoin I have on Gemini, and I'm going to be sending it over to my vault. So I can select continue. And it's going to give me this withdrawal summary, right? So I want to make sure, and this is where I could do maybe a spot check between what I'm being shown here and on the Unchained Capital page, just to make sure that address is where I want to be sending it. And I'm sending this amount of Bitcoin, certainly on this date. So I can go ahead and select request withdrawal, and it's going to have me prompt on my phone to enter my two-factor authentication. Perfect. Well, not perfect, actually. It changed on me. That's the tricky part with two-factor authentication, is you do need to beat the clock sometimes. Let me go ahead and select this option. And now I'm going to approve on my phone one more time from the Gemini app. I don't know if you can see that there on the screen, but I'm going to approve it. And it's going to put that request through to withdraw the Bitcoin. And I ultimately should be met with a green successful transaction broadcast screen, although it may just take a second here. Perfect. So now on top, and it is kind of small text. So what I can try to do is maybe zoom, well, I guess that took it away, but that transaction was successfully broadcast. So now if I go over here to my Unchained vault, depending on the time, the different exchanges batch their withdrawals out. What we should ultimately be able to see is a pending deposit into my vault. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is press the refresh button, and we'll see if that pending deposit is going to show up here. And it may take about 60 seconds or so, when I was testing this earlier, for Gemini to actually send that transaction to the blockchain. So while we're waiting for that to show up as pending, there is something that I'd like to cover, that I love covering when we're onboarding clients, and that's the importance of confirming that deposit address on your device. So now what does this actually mean? Well, what this means is that deposit address that I used to stick into Gemini just now, and I confirm my deposit address both before that Gemini withdrawal, really before I make any big Bitcoin deposit to my vault, is you select deposit and you select show address to actually see your address. But how do we know that what's being shown in the browser is actually our deposit address, that, the one that I hold 2 of the keys to? So one of the ways that you can do that is by confirming that deposit address on your device. So really want to preface this with Trezor devices, both models, Model T and Model 1, on the latest firmware update from Trezor, will be able to display this address, this 3GS address, to me on my device. Now, cold cards, you can also verify your deposit address on a cold card in their Address Explorer option, which is on the main menu of the cold card screen. Ledgers, we do need to highlight that ledgers currently do not have the ability for you to verify and confirm your deposit address on the screen for a ledger. So it is important to note that. But with Trezors, which is what I'm working with here today, the Trezor Model T, what we can go ahead and do is confirm this address on my device. And I'm going to show you how to do that here really quickly. So to confirm my address on my device, what I want to do is plug in my Trezor Model T. I'm going to tap the screen of the device and enter my PIN to unlock the device there. Perfect. Once my PIN is being verified and it is unlocked, what I can go ahead and do in the interface of the Unchained Vault is select Confirm on Trezor. Now I get to select which key that I'm going to be confirming. Ocean is actually my cold card device, is my cold card key. Volcano is what I'm working with here. So I'd select Volcano, go ahead and select Next, and then Connect to Trezor. Now, this is a flow that many of you are familiar with. You get that extra tab opened up in your browser, and you're going to see in blue on bottom, allow once for this session. I can go ahead and select that, and then select export. And now on the screen of my device, what it's going to be showing me is my deposit address. So I want to make sure to go back to Unchained Capital and match it up with what you're seeing there on the screen. And I guess I'll show this to the camera here if you're able to make that out. That is that same 3GSJN character list that I'm being shown in the browser. So this is important because now this tells me that there's not something in the browser, maybe a malicious browser extension or some malware that's messing with this address that I'm seeing on the screen. So I can be confident that this device has one of the keys in my multisig quorum, and that it's a 2 of 3 and not maybe a 2 of 2 multisig or a 3 of 5, or there's another key in the quorum. So I can go ahead and press the check mark on my device, and I get this nice success option here, or this success message here rather, in the platform. I can go ahead and select finish. So now what I want to do is refresh my screen one more time just to see if that pending deposit has come through from Gemini, and it looks like it has. So it has not confirmed yet on the blockchain. So the miners have not organized that transaction into a block and successfully added it to the chain quite yet, but it has been broadcast to the Bitcoin blockchain. And because it's a pending deposit, I'm going to see it highlighted next to my confirmed balance. So in due time, that will shift over here to the left and my 0.00033 Bitcoin will update. But we also see in the bottom right-hand portion of the screen under transaction history that the deposit is pending along with the timestamp and the total amount of Bitcoin. So that transfer from the exchange was successful into my vault. So one more thing I want to highlight here is that depositing Bitcoin into your vault, it doesn't necessarily have to come from an exchange. You can move Bitcoin into your vault from maybe another Bitcoin wallet software that you work with. I really enjoy working with Blue Wallet. So I have Blue Wallet down here. Maybe you can see that on my screen share. If I were to open up Blue Wallet, you're going to see that I have a webinar Blue Wallet that I created. And I have about 0.00043 Bitcoin over in this Bitcoin wallet as well. And even though this Blue Wallet is not an exchange, it's still a single signature Bitcoin wallet. I have one set of seed words, and I want to make sure that this Bitcoin is as secure as possible, and I want to move it over to my vault. So the process for doing that is nearly identical, and it might be even a little bit more intuitive than trying to navigate through an exchange. So what I want to do here is select send on the Blue Wallet interface. It's kind of down here at bottom next to receive. And I'm given the option here to enter an address, maybe add a note to self if I ever want to open up my Blue Wallet again and remind myself why I sent this transaction. So this address field, same process as before with Gemini, I can navigate back to my vault. And even though I have a pending deposit, I could still grab my deposit address and send another transaction. So we can go ahead and select deposit and show address here. And this is that same 3GSJN address. I can go ahead and click it to copy it to my clipboard, open up Blue Wallet, and paste it into Blue Wallet. Perfect. Now it has this fee attached here, and I want to make sure to enter the amount of Bitcoin that I'm going to be sending. So in this particular instance, let's go up here and enter this as the entire balance of what's showing in my Blue Wallet. So 0.00043 Bitcoin. And because there is a fee, it may give me a little error here. So I need to either select a smaller amount of Bitcoin or adjust the fee. So I'm going to go ahead and select next since I edited that down, and might even select an even lesser amount of Bitcoin because that is accounting for that fee. So we can go ahead and select next. And it's going to give me this kind of review again, make sure I'm sending to that 3GSJN address. And I can go ahead and select send now. And perfect, you get this little check mark animation to signify that the transaction has been sent and broadcast from Blue Wallet to my vault. So it'll give you a little log of that as well. Now in the Unchained Capital platform, what we can go ahead and do is also refresh the screen here to see a new pending deposit. So it looks like our deposit from Gemini earlier that I did at 11:26 a.m. Central Time has fully confirmed on the blockchain, and my confirmed balance is updated. And now we even see a pending deposit from Blue Wallet. So it's a lot of talking about Bitcoin transactions, but the most important thing, what we did here was we showed how to go to an exchange and transfer Bitcoin from your exchange to your multisig vault at Unchained Capital, and then how to do that same process with a different wallet software that's not an exchange, wallet software called Blue Wallet. In between both of those items, we confirmed our vault address on our device, which is a really, really powerful tool that enables you to not trust what you're being shown in the browser. So at this point, I'm going to go back over to our awesome presentation. And for the next part, we brought Bitcoin into our vault, which is fantastic, but how do we get it out? So I'm going to hand it over to David to discuss that. And maybe even before I do, is there any questions that came in from the audience? Maybe we could address one or two at this time.
I actually think you covered it so well that there are no questions on the deposit or moving funds off of exchanges. We do have some more general questions, but I was going to go ahead and save those to the end. So I say let's go ahead and get into withdrawing or moving funds out of our vault.
All right.
Awesome.
Wow. Tyler did such an exceptional job. There's no questions. I'm not surprised.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
That's why this guy is our technical director. Incredible job. Okay. So as Tyler already explained, and what I touched on earlier, our favorite thing to do for clients is to help them pull Bitcoin off of exchanges or single signature addresses to move into their own wallet or multi-signature wallet or multi-signature address protected by their own keys. Now, it's important to go through the steps of withdrawing or spending from your vault as well. So that's what I'm going to cover here. So as you can see, here is my, here's just a demo vault. It is already funded. So once you deposit Bitcoin into your vault, you'll see a balance right here at the top. On the left, or sorry, on the right bottom side, you'll see transaction history. These are previous deposits and withdrawals. So what I'm going to do to initiate the withdrawal is open up the withdraw field by pressing the withdraw button. And now we need to get an outside address. This could be an exchange, hopefully not. Hopefully you're not sending it back to an exchange. It could be Tyler's deposit address, or it could be a donation. So for the sake of a nod to Bitcoin and the demo, we're going to go ahead and send $21 USD to the Human Rights Foundation. So they put on the Oslo Freedom Fest this week, and those conferences are not cheap. So we're going to go ahead and help them out here. All right, so what I'm doing here is just grabbing an address. Again, this is a deposit address. This could be Tyler's, it could be the donation, it could be another vault that you or somebody else has. So I'll copy it to the clipboard here. Okay, and let's try that round two. Here we go. So that's where we're sending the funds. All right, so the next step is to say how much Bitcoin or USD you would like to send or withdraw. And I'm going to go ahead and do 21 USD. The next step is choosing the fee rate. So our recommendation is to keep it high priority. Remember, Bitcoin, when you send Bitcoin, you are going to pay a fee depending on how congested the network is and how much data is inside of that transaction. So you do have the opportunity to go over to custom and choose your own fee rate. You can go as low as 3 sats per byte. To be sure that your transaction is going to get picked up and broadcast to the next block, we go ahead and recommend that you just keep the high priority. So next, this is where you decide who signs. I have 2 keys here that I use to build this vault, Marzocchi and Shimano. If something was to happen to Marzocchi, if I had lost it or don't have access to it, I could click that, check Unchained, and then this would notify us that we need to be the second signature in this transaction. So I have both of these keys. This is what I will use to sign. So I'm going to go ahead and leave Marzocchi and Shimano checked. So next you'll see the summary page. This is saying the details of the transaction that you have authored. So it's where are you sending it from, where are you sending it to, what amount would you like to send, what amount of Bitcoin would you like to send, and then what fees would you like to pay. So I'm going to go ahead and choose create withdraw and success. So now I've authored the transaction. Now I go over to actually sign the transaction. That's where you will need both of your devices that house the keys that you would have generated using your devices. All right, so the first one here, I'm going to start with Shimano because it's a Trezor Model T, and that's what most of our clients use. I have this magnetically stuck to the board back here. So I will go ahead and plug this in and unlock it, and we'll follow the steps here to sign with the first key. So here we go. I'm unlocking my device here. So it's verifying the PIN. And now I can choose Trezor, sign with Trezor, and it brings me over to the Trezor.io platform where I allow once for this session. And then I go through the steps of confirming where I'm sending it, the change address, which I'll touch on in a moment, and then a final confirmation of sending it. So it says, would you like to send 38,613 Satoshis to Human Rights Foundation address. It doesn't actually say Human Rights Foundation, but has the address there. So I can go back over to Unchained Capital and just confirm. So I've got 3AJ, BLK. That looks like the same address. So that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and check that box. And then the next step is confirming the change address. So Tyler touched on this before, and part of the question that we were asked before, which is a great question, is why is there a single address? Part of what when you transact in your vault or in any Bitcoin address, the entire balance of that address gets sent out of the address. So in this instance, 38,613 Satoshis are getting sent to the Human Rights Foundation, and then the remaining balance, which is 21,073 Satoshis, is dropping into an address that I own. It's within my multisig wallet, referred to as the change address. So that's what this is confirming here. So I take a look at that, 3EZAD, and that looks like the same address. So I go ahead and confirm, and that looks good. Last step, it just checks one more time. Are you sure you want to send this? I say yes, I check the box, and there you go. Shimano is signed. So you'll see a banner across Shimano, meaning that one is signed. So the cool thing about multisig and our platform specifically is I can take Shimano, unplug it. I can even log out of my account. I can go back over into home. I can shut my laptop, get on an airplane, and go to where my other device is, if that was the case. When I get back into my account and I go back into the Trezor 100 vault, it'll say withdraw in progress, waiting for a second signature. So that means you do not have to sign transactions with both of your keys at the same time. We like to look at having keys in the same spot at the same time as a potential single point of failure. So this is a good check to make sure that you know that you can go to your safe deposit box, trusted family member, wherever a second device might be, and make that second signature when it makes sense for you. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my second device, which is a ledger. So it is going to take me through the same exact steps here, but I will sign with the ledger. So here I am just putting in my PIN code, and there you go. Open the Bitcoin app, application ready. So now it says NanoX is paired. I connect and follow the prompts on the device. So same as before, review output number 1, 38, that looks good. That's the same address. So I'll go ahead and accept that. Review output number 2, this will be my change address. So I go through the same process there. That looks good. Going to accept, and then finally accept and send. Okay, so from here, Marzoki is now signed and it's ready to broadcast. So we're going to go ahead and submit this, broadcast. And now, similar to Bitcoin being deposited into your vault, now it is getting ready to be picked up by miners and broadcast to the blockchain, permanent record, public ledger for everyone to see. This says broadcast success. So now I should see up here, as I refresh my page. All right, let's see. So it looks like it's a little too soon to see that, but you will have a pending transaction, a pending withdrawal. All right, as soon as, there we go, October 8th, 10:39 a.m., withdraw pending. So looks like everything was done correctly there. And what you can do if you'd like is click the link here in this magnifying glass, and it will bring you over to blockstream.info, and you can actually look at what that transaction is doing in live time on the blockchain. So
awesome.
That all looks good. And I think what I'm going to do now is just stop share here, and we can go ahead and bring this full circle and get back into the Q&A. It looks like we have a little bit of extra time here. So I know you guys had some great questions rolling in. Justine, if you want to take it and start asking a couple of questions here, Tyler and I and yourself can do our best to get those answered.
Awesome. Great job. Yeah, I think it's really important to go over that change address. I know it's something that when you're not aware, having the second address show up when you're trying to do a transaction can be a little terrifying. So that was a really good explanation, and thank you for covering that in such great detail. So we just have a few questions actually. So one I did answer from Joseph, but I just wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit, if that's okay. And then I'll give you guys some questions. Joseph essentially was noticing within his vault, he could set up a video verification. And what he was wanting to do was be able to choose exactly how that verification works. So if you're not familiar, in your vault, you can go into your settings and go into security settings, and you actually can opt into a video verification aspect where you would record a video, set the limits of what you want that set to. And if someone, even if it's yourself, went to go withdraw to that limit, we would request another video verification. So that can be seen there. He was asking specifics on exactly how those settings worked, which I did answer in email, but just wanted to let everybody know watching that that was a feature that you can do within your vault. And if you haven't explored those security settings, I definitely recommend doing so because there are a lot of really good opt-in ones there as well. But one question that did come in from James at the very beginning here was, if I wanted to set up a new vault using the Shamir secret feature on Trezor instead of usual 24-word seed, is Unchained fully compatible with the system? And can we restore access using Shamir? So this might be a question for Tyler. I can jump in if needed, but if you want to go ahead and maybe explain for the audience what that is and perhaps what it's trying to achieve and maybe how multisig already helps do that as well. So if you want to take that one, Tyler.
Yeah, so I can give and I'll just make sure that I'm not on mute here. Yeah, okay, cool. I can give kind of a brief high level overview, but even me along my Bitcoin journey, I kind of realized, the power of multisig from, before joining Unchained Capital, when I was kind of diving deep into self-custody myself, and I was looking at these different options. And with Shamir secret sharing, the way that I understood it when I was reading about it was that you have fundamentally your seed, and then you're taking that seed and breaking it up into separate components that, if you needed to make use of it, you'd bring all of those separate components together to sign a transaction. Now, that is certainly a way of doing things. But with multi-signature, I just find it to be a lot more powerful for some additional reasons. One being one that David touched on. So, when you sign with one of your keys, you can actually, hop on a plane or take a car ride over to your other device and sign with your other key as well. You don't need to co-locate any of the elements of your setup. So that along with some other things, there's, some technology being worked on in the space. There's really awesome educational materials, Unchained and otherwise, that are out there for multisig. So that's what made me kind of gravitate more towards multisig. So as for a explicit, pure answer, I do like speaking on things that I'm 100% competent in. So what I would be able to do is go to our engineering team and get maybe some more details, and I'd be happy to email that client individually with kind of a full-fledged, maybe we could even hop on a Zoom, because I love doing that, to talk about this more in depth. But Justine, if you have experience with Shamir secret sharing, I'd love to hear your input as well.
My understanding on that is that's just specifically to Trezor. So my understanding would be that it has no interference with you using a multi-sig vault. The concern there would be you're setting up an extra layer of security, but you're also adding complexity. And with multi-sig, you're already eliminating your seeds as a single point of failure. The whole point of Shamir is to eliminate those seeds as a single point of failure, because in single signature, they are a single point of failure, right? So it's almost, in my opinion, with multisig not needed, but it is something that you'd like to do. That would be just solely with your Trezor. It wouldn't change your interaction with Unchained whatsoever. It would just be a recovery aspect. So definitely personal choice there. In my opinion, I don't think it's adding any extra security though. That would be my addition there, if that's helpful. All right, let's see here. And so I'm just scrolling through, and I answered one of the questions through text. We just had another question on the video verification, if it was mandatory to use Unchained Capital as a second signature. I did state in there that it is not a mandatory feature, it is opt-in. Now, if you do ask Unchained Capital to sign, for those maybe that aren't aware, there is a security protocol involved in that. And there is a time period. It's slow on purpose, right? We want to ensure it's you requesting that signature. Sometimes you have to wait at least 24 hours for that signature. And there may be additional security protocols built in. If we see anything that maybe seems a little off, we might ask you to do a video verification or jump on a phone call with us. And that's us trying to help ensure it's you asking. So just wanted to make sure that that question was answered, but I did so in text. So the next question that I saw was from Brent. Let me get back to it here. So he states, I understand the importance of keeping the seed phrases safe and secure, but what about the Trezor wallets? What, for example, is the risk if both wallets fall into the wrong hands? Great question about keys in general, and maybe wanting to dig in a little bit deeper to make sure we understand keys. And then also the importance of perhaps securing those geographically in separate places. I don't know, David, do you feel comfortable taking that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we can find Brent's information and send him thoughtfully produced operational security guide. It's 14 pages, and this is something that we have produced for clients, and we typically hand it out after calls. But the main thing that we like to talk about is, to Justine's point, geographically distributed multisig. So that's where you have your two devices and you have your backup recovery seed phrase for each of those devices. Remember, the devices produce or they generate a private key. The seed phrases, for lack of a better analogy, you can think of it as the human readable version of that private key. So our best recommendation right off the bat is to take one of those seed phrases and separate it geographically from the pack. The reason I brought up the operational security guide is there's a bunch of different scenarios depending on how many physical locations you have access to that are secure. So you could have a home office, an office, a safe deposit box, a water fireproof safe. These are all places that you could potentially be putting each of these pieces of information, the hardware and the backup seed phrases. But if you only have one or two, then your scenario is going to be a little bit different. So that's kind of a high level breakdown of what the best practice is initially right off the bat. Is you take one of those recovery seed phrases and you separate it from the pack. And that way, these, if everything's together, it's a single point of failure. And if you have that seed phrase, you can then use it to restore your private key to any device, cold card, ledger, Trezor, devices that haven't even been created yet, and be able to recover your Bitcoin using one signature from that device or from that key, and then one signature from Unchained. So that's kind of my overall high level breakdown of security best practices when it comes to devices and seed phrases. I think there's one more element of that question I maybe didn't address in there.
I can. I was thinking about this as you were answering, David, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And for Brent, thinking about these devices, if both of your devices were compromised, well, you think about at the device level, what are we putting in place that's stopping that unauthorized physical access from truly taking place, and that's your PIN. So that is a device specific PIN that is kind of that last line of defense should a crazy scenario occur where both of your devices were compromised. Under that scenario, you could take, and this is the power of those seed words, just like David was mentioning, is you could take those seed words then and restore them on an entirely new device. And you'd be able to take the appropriate steps forward to maybe move your funds out of your vault that was comprised of your two now compromised keys to somewhere more safe in the interim as you set up a new vault or set up a new wallet structure. So, really, that's why we do say PIN protection on your devices. That does help against unauthorized physical access. Then really ensuring that those seed words are physically secure. So in a crazy scenario like that, you could take your seed words and restore them onto a new device.
Perfect. And I just did want to add as well, since we do have a few more minutes here. So also one kind of cool thing about multisig is that just having those two devices, they still have to know where your address is, right? Those devices don't know you have a multisig setup. They could plug them in. They could get Trezor to pop up. They could open your PIN, but they have to know you have a multisig setup. So even in that horrible situation where you maybe have lost access to both of your keys, they still have to have that third component of your address information. We call that a wallet configuration file, or they'd have to have access to your Unchained Capital account. They would need a little bit more information. The great thing about that is it gives us a little time to help you to recover those funds, move them to a different vault that you now hold the keys to and have not been have any sort of issue involved in that. So just wanted to add that in as well. There's a few more general questions here. Turam did ask for an update on Unchained Capital self-directed IRA. I'll just take this one real quick because As far as a clear update, there will be some information coming out. Jeff, Andrew, and the team are working really hard on this. If you are on the wait list, you should be getting some communication. If you're not on the wait list, I suggest going to Unchained Capital and signing up for that. But you should be getting some news in the next few days if you're on that list. So that's what I will share for now. I can't give any specific details other than what's already been announced, but you should be hearing something pretty shortly. And then Matt had a question, is it possible to have this multi-sig setup mirrored on a node? Tyler, do you want to take this one and maybe cover what that looks like as well?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. So where we grab our Bitcoin state from is using blockstream.info's API, and there's also mempool.space is an area where we go and grab the information necessary to author up, help you author up your transaction and broadcast your transaction to the network. So grabbing things like fee estimates and connecting to the Bitcoin blockchain and broadcasting from your vault. Now, using your own node, really powerful thing to do to support the network. It's becoming easier and easier to do, which is great. There's awesome implementations like MyNode. Umbrel is getting more and more popular. Honestly, downloading Bitcoin Core, verifying your download and just running Bitcoin Core on an old laptop is super, super cool. Now, connecting your vault to your own node, that does come with a little bit of nuance. So because in the platform, we have our default way of connecting to the Bitcoin blockchain, you could still connect your vault to your own node, but it is a little bit of an interesting scenario that would come into play. So what you could do, for example, is take your wallet configuration file, that file that we spoke about at the end of the key terms, and you could use that wallet configuration file to rebuild your multi-sig vault in Caravan, which is our open source tool, or in like Sparrow wallet, for example, or in Electrum. And then within each one of those wallet coordinator implementations, you could then connect to your own node. And each of those implementations has a different way through which you'd connect to your own node. Now, you can certainly do that, and that option is available to you, but it does require a few more steps. So right now within the platform, connecting to your own node is maybe something for our product team to receive a lot of feedback on, and maybe this is something that if our users are really keen on doing it, we'd look at exploring that option, but it is available to you, just not directly in the unchained.com interface.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we have some really great questions here. I'm trying to kind of go through them. I did have a couple people asking for that security guide that David mentioned. So I did put this in the chat, but if you are watching and that sounds like something you'd like to review, you can go ahead and email myself, if I can talk today, at Justine@Unchained or David@Unchained or Tyler@Unchained, and we can get that to you. It is a PDF that you can review, and I think we will be releasing some more information on that as well. But if it's something that you'd like to see, we can send that to you. I did have a question from MD here. He's asking if an individual account, so I think he means his Unchained Capital account, what if somebody gets into his Unchained Capital account? Can they just replace the keys and take the funds? Is that possible? So I'm not sure which of you feels more comfortable, maybe jump in if you do, to discuss what that would look like and what they would have to kind of jump through in that regard, and if it is an actual issue to be concerned about.
So yeah, I can take this first. So full circle back to the original question about the video verification. There are a lot of other components that somebody would need to hack your account. That's why we recommend two-factor authenticator, whether that's the Google Authenticator or a YubiKey or something like that. And then you can do a video verification where you can't actually remove the Bitcoin from a vault without recording a video. Now, can someone hack into an account? So if they managed to get your phone, your password, know that you're an Unchained Capital client, if you didn't have the video verification set up, they could get in, but they would still need both of your keys. So they need your physical devices. So that again touches on the importance of having that geographically distributed multi-sig setup, where maybe you have one device separated from the pack, your seed phrases in different locations. So there are a lot of steps that someone would need to take to get there. But if someone does have all that information, both of your keys, they can sign a transaction to move Bitcoin to another address. They would not be able to easily go through and just add new keys and then somehow replace the keys in the vault you already have built with other keys. So when you built a multi-signature collaborative custody vault, what you did is you created an address. You created a wallet of addresses technically, but that is where the Bitcoin will live until a transaction is authored and signed by both keys to send to another address. So you can't just come in and add new keys to to the profile and then say, hey, profile Unchained, I would like to shift Bitcoin over to these keys. They would have to still make those two signatures. So that would be my best high level. Tyler, if you have anything to add to that, or Justine.
Yeah, I would add one more component to that. There are a few areas or instances in the platform where we do require that video verification. One of those being a two-factor authentication reset on your account. So if somebody did gain access to your phone and wanted to reset your two-factor authentication, we would require video verification for that. And then another one is actually our key replacement process. So let's say somebody did access your account and they maybe had a Trezor device of their own, and they're thinking, well, I could just add this as a key to the Unchained Capital platform and maybe do it again and replace the keys that are currently there, and then kind of sweep all the funds to now a new vault that's controlled by my two keys as the attacker. Well, that's an area in the platform where we do require video verification. Our key replacement process is something that I work with clients directly in doing this, and we do have a video verification that does prompt before you're able to sign for a key replacement transaction. So that is required. So that step is there again, in that I'll frame it as a doomsday scenario where somebody does get into your account. To David's point, they need your two keys in order to move your Bitcoin, and even if they tried to replace a key, we do have that video verification process fully in place.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That covers most of the questions. I did answer a few of them in text that just weren't very much on topic. But as far as just wanting to share that information with everybody in the audience, and also, yes, if you asked a question and I didn't get to it yet, I will try to do so as well. But we are coming up on the hour, so I wanted to kind of turn it back to David so we could wrap up this week's webinar, and thank everybody for coming.
Awesome. And thank you, Justine and Tyler. Thank you, Justine, for fielding all of those questions at the end there. That hour flew by fast. So if there was anything that you didn't get to ask, reach out. Justine already gave you our email addresses, but it's very easy. David@unchained.com, Tyler@unchained.com, Justine@unchained.com. So feel free to reach out. All right, so thank you. And we're wrapping up the Vault's Continuing Education webinar series. Again, this was the deposit and withdrawals fundamentals. We try to do these types of webinars on a monthly basis. The next one we have scheduled right now, which you'll be able to register for soon, will be on November 5th, and we'll be covering hardware devices and seeds. And remember, these webinars are exclusive private webinars for Unchained clients only. And we cover everything from basic to advanced topics, everything in between. And as always, they're always recorded and posted to our YouTube page. So if you're not subscribed there, go ahead and do that now so that you will get notified if you do miss a webinar when new ones come out. So I will sign off. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and thank you guys so much for joining us today. And yeah, thanks.